the Great British Manufacturing Podcast, brought to you by MTD, MFG and Jefferson.
Hello and welcome to the Great British Manufacturing Podcast. On this week's show, we will review the latest positive news from the British manufacturing sector, including news from Nissan, Arla, Dynamo Motor Company, as well as Sheffield Forge Masters. This week, we also welcome a special guest, John Stambridge, the GB Bobsleigh Development Pilot. But before we start, I'd like to mention the Factory Now platform. New members are joining the platform every week, which has been launched to help British manufacturing boost sales, collaborate and reshore. New members this week include flooring specialist TPS 360, one of the UK's leading protective solution facility management providers, and Namuda Visual Software. Its lean manufacturing software drives shop floor productivity by 20% and increases quality by 35%. My name is Joe Reynolds, and joining me today is my co-host Stuart Whitehead. Stuart, welcome. How are things?
Yeah, really good. Thank you, Joe. And great to see new members joining Factory Now every week. And there really isn't a better time to join. You know, you get dedicated microsites, unlimited content, articles, videos, unlimited job postings. The list goes on. So please get in touch with us. Inquiries at mtdmfg.com for more information, or alternatively message us on social media. Find us at MTDMFG or at Jefferson on Twitter or LinkedIn.
Yep, let's jump in with the news. It's a good one to start. The future of Sheffield Forge Masters has been secured. It's looking like it's going to be acquired by the Ministry of Defence.
Yeah, fantastic news, and certainly one of the most popular stories on social media this week. The investment will secure the historic manufacturer's role as a critical supplier to the next generation of UK defence programmes, but also continuing its independent commercial activities, serving civil, nuclear, oil and gas, power generation and steel. The MOD has agreed to buy the company's entire share capital to £2.56 million, set to be completed on the 19th of August. The transaction is structured to inject up to £400 million new investment over the next decade into defence critical assets, including plans for a new heavy forge line, major machine tool replacements and a site-wide HP upgrade. And all this investment is expected to retain and create new, highly skilled manufacturing jobs across Sheffield, which is great news.
Yeah, and the next one, these have got a lot of airtime recently, rightly so. Nissan, they're creating 400 jobs at its Sunderland plant. You know, fabulous news on the back of a £1 billion announcement recently.
Yeah, it's quite ironic, isn't it? You know, all the uncertainty and what we've discussed about Nissan over the last few years. And like you say, it's almost every week there's good news from the plant. So they've launched another major recruitment drive to boost its manufacturing workforce with 400 permanent and temporary jobs available at the North East sites. Japanese car maker says with the all-new Qashqai in production and the recent £1 billion electric vehicle hub announcement, which will see its battery partner Envision build a new gigafactory adjacent to the site and a new electric vehicle introduced, there's never been a better time to join. Alan Johnson, Vice President Manufacturing Nissan Sunderland plant, said last month we announced the £1 billion investment, the single biggest investment since we opened 35 years ago. These new recruits will play an important role in preparing the plant for the arrival of an all-new electric crossover model, as well as delivering Qashqai, Duke and Leaf to our customers in more than 130 world markets.
Yeah, just fabulous news. Speaking of good news, Arla, they're going to invest $25 million transferring production to the UK. I actually saw an advert for these Arla yogurts on the TV yesterday, and they talk about Danish yogurts and all the rest of it, but it sounds like they're going to be made here.
Yeah, fantastic news again. The Danish dairy giant has announced it will create around about 50 new jobs at its factory in Settle in North Yorkshire. It's moving the production of lactose-free milk for the domestic market from Denmark and Sweden, would you believe, to the UK, and this is part of a wider £25 million investment. A significant proportion of that investment is being put towards new production equipment, filling lines, packaging facilities and a new energy centre. All told, that will double the firm's capacity at the North Yorkshire site.
So, Stuart, we'll take a brief pause for this week's positive UK manufacturing news and introduce this week's special guest, John Stambridge, the GB Bobsleigh Development Pilot. John, a very warm welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you very much. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you about bobsleigh and the challenges that we have.
Yeah, so just to start with, before we get too much involved in the bobsleigh side of things, can we talk about you, your career to date, and your current role and responsibilities on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, sure. I'm an aircraft avionics supervisor in the Royal Air Force. I currently work on the E3D Sentry fleet at RAF Waddington. My main primary role is on the avionics, electrical, comms, flight systems and navigation systems, ensuring that they are maintained. The aircrew will go up with a fault. We come back down and we get that replaced and ready for them to go out. So I've spent 13 years in the Air Force now, with working on 2-3 tours of Afghanistan. I've travelled the world doing lots of different things regarding that, and it's really a worthwhile experience that I've had so far. So.
Yeah, sounds it. And just secondly, an overview of the GB bobsleigh team, please.
Yeah, so the GB bobsleigh team is run by the BBSA, which is the British Bobsleigh Skeleton Association. We've got 3 development teams, one of which I'm part of, and 2 male senior and 1 female team. They're eyeing up the 22 Olympics in Beijing next year. As the development teams, myself and the other Navy pilot Adam Baird, and then was Axel Brown, are looking towards the Olympics at 2026. So we're on a pathway and trying to do the best we can to develop, move up to that next spot, and compete against some of the world's best. So
fascinating to hear your background, John. Thanks for joining us. Obviously, quite a number of components go into making a bobsleigh team fast. Athletic ability, equipment, pilot skill, and so on and so forth. Is it possible to kind of split those and to weight those components? Which are more important, and what are the main factors to help you win, essentially?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say probably there's a massive. There's the big 3 aspects of bobsleigh is you push your velocity of your athletic ability at the start line. So you're trying to drive that sled to maximum velocity over a 40-50 meter distance, and this sled weighs 170 to 180 kilos. You reach probably about 50 kilometers an hour by that point before you go for the first clock. And a tenth on the start with a consistent drive and the same equipment could give you 3 tenths at the bottom on the track. So that helps your maximal velocity as you go down. The biggest thing for me, I'd say, is equipment. Very much like Formula One, the newest sleds seem to be quicker, or proven sleds and designs that work tend to get you the quicker on ice. You could put a really fast pilot or a slow pilot in a quicker or slower sled, and the equipment will generally take over to a degree. But along with that is your driver skills. So your pilot's got to make a decision as he's going down the ice to turn at the right time. The world-class pilots can step into those maybe lesser sleds and still get those good results, but you always need that fast equipment. You can see in the Formula One where Vettel switched from Ferrari to Aston Martin, and the results aren't always there. So
absolutely, and continuing the F1 theme, how important are aerodynamics in terms of maximising the speed?
Yeah, so regarding aerodynamics, the sleds are put through some wind tunnels, I think, originally. I know prior to the 2014 Olympics and the 2018 Olympics, the senior 4-man teams were in a wind tunnel looking at their positioning of putting the athletes in the right place. So if you've got a big bulky athlete weighing 110 kilos and one that's 100 and is 6'4" and the other one's 5'10", you want to try and find the most aerodynamic profile for that. The equipment itself, there's particular rules and a skill set on that to stop you from adding stuff like canards and the crazy stuff that we see in the Formula One nowadays. That's not because of safety and stuff like that. It can't be applied. But we have race suits. We're racing in Lycra to try and reduce that wind drag over that first 45. And I think a sled traveling at like 50, 60 miles an hour is hitting maybe like 30 kilos of extra drag on that front portion. So you want to try and minimize that as much as you can. So
The equipment and the testing seems very expensive. A question from a listener: what is the typical cost of equipment, and how is it funded currently?
So the equipment for a 2-man sled, you're looking at around €60,000. A 4-man sled could range to 80 to 100,000 euros. How it's funded at the moment is corporate funding. We need to go through corporate sponsorship to try and find and raise cash as a team for newer sled and equipment. Due to a lack of UK sport funding, something that got taken away after the 2018 Olympics. UK sport funding is very much based on results, and if you're not performing, that financial incentive gets taken away. So it's sort of if you don't get those results, you'll shoot yourself in the foot, and it has a knock-on effect for the future. So.
Yeah, it kind of seems the wrong way around, doesn't it? You would think, if you're struggling, you'd need more support. But if we move on, I'm just interested to know what it's like to be involved in the crash and, the impact, any of the damage to yourself or your equipment, really. Because rightly or wrongly, my only exposure to bobsleigh really is cool runnings. So it's fair to say my expertise is limited, John.
Oh, yeah, I really do appreciate that. Cool runnings is probably the most prominent thing that we'll hear about bobsleigh. It's famous, really good film, and to put an exposure for bobsleigh is great. Regarding a crash, it's difficult to describe. It's more like you're in a washing machine at 70 miles an hour, but you can't get out. So you're upside down. You've got the weight of the sled on you, and you've just got to hold on. I've been both a brakeman and a pilot. So I've had the experience of being in both positions when it happens. The pilot's got probably a bit more room and a bit more safety, protected by the cattle, and the brakeman's just holding on, moving the pressure from the sled and himself to keep himself off the ice if he can. You're moving from your shoulder to your head with your helmet on to reduce the risk of those risks like ice burns, which are possible. The equipment we wear is like a Kevlar vest to try and mitigate that. The sleds themselves are designed from carbon fibre. They're with quite thick layers in particular areas. So we find the equipment does hold up. But if you're repeatedly crashing day in, day out, then it's going to have a negative effect on your equipment stiffness and its ability to get you those results. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I wouldn't look forward to one of those. But it's interesting, at the beginning of this podcast, you talked about, your background as an aircraft technician in the RAF. How does that help you, develop as an athlete?
So it gives me an understanding. I've been to places like Afghanistan and stuff, and I've been in situations where you've had to overcome stuff and you've got to challenge yourself, and that transfers well to bobsleigh as we just spoke about a crash. You've got to have that trust in that willingness to get back in, and overcoming that in your day in, day out life is something that's really helped. The Air Force itself do support me by allowing me time off to compete over the winter season because of the level that I'm racing at. So the skills of the engineering stuff that I've learned really helped me apply that to the sled and sort of repairs, like battlefield repairs, I'd say, and understanding how the sled works itself has really allowed me to put that onto the pilot skill of driving and understand what forces are going through, what I need to do at the right time, and it has a positive effect, I believe. So,
absolutely, and I imagine the RAF are very supportive as well of you competing in the future and testing and developing the sled and the thing. Obviously, it's been very difficult for everyone and every sport over the last year or so. Are there any particular challenges that you've had to overcome competing throughout the pandemic?
So it was my first development year, so my first year as a pilot last season, and I've probably chose the wrong time to get into that level of competition. So the first challenge was to find sponsorship, and when a global pandemic is going on and not knowing, people were furloughed, companies are quite reserved with their marketing budgets very much reduced. That was the first challenge for us. One was negotiating all the extra extra rules and guidelines for travel. We were exempt as elite athletes to compete, so we had to make sure we had the right paperwork. COVID tests, we probably had about 40 to 45 COVID tests over a 3-month period to ensure we got on the ice, and that increased our costs. When it first kicked off, companies were charging well near £200 for a COVID test at times. So yeah, you had to overcome that. It affected our race performance as well. The usual atmosphere that you'd have around the track was reduced. So your involvement with other teams and developing with support that way was reduced. One of our brakemen actually got a false positive COVID test while we were away prior to our first race, which reduced our first couple of days of training. So we had to isolate until we could get another test to confirm, which is a knock-on effect to how we perform then later on. So yeah, it's a massive challenge to overcome for us and everyone really in that time. We're dealing with such a new thing.
Absolutely. And final question for me, you talked earlier saying that there's a limited number of equipment manufacturers for the bobsleigh sport. We've seen the likes of Lotus, develop cycles and so forth. Is it viable for a sled to be manufactured in Britain?
It would be a wonderful thing for a sled to be manufactured in Britain with the amount of pedigree and expertise that you've got. Majority of the Formula One teams are based within the UK for a reason, I believe, because of the skill set that's around. So I'd like to see if it is possible. Then please get in touch. I know previously, maybe 2013, 2014, McLaren were involved to a degree with the design of a sled that got used in the 4-man, I believe, and it had very good aerodynamic properties. But it's the understanding and testing for the sport is, because we don't have a track in the UK, we would have to, the expenses for R&D and that sort of stuff do push out. I imagine that's why a major issue with it. So.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating interview. Thank you very much. I've just got one more question, if that's okay. And it's, what do you offer sponsors in return for support, and how would the sponsor get in touch?
So as a team, we're offering a set of unique marketing opportunities in return for financial support or equipment-based support. So we're working with a carbon fibre company, KS Composites in Melton Mowbray. They've got vast experience with like Formula One and designing things from carbon fibre bathtubs, loads of bits. So we're working with them to do the repairs on the sled that are probably beyond my expertise, and we'll offer them marketing space on our vehicle. We're working with engineering companies such as Acres to design new bobsleigh products specifically that will help us as a team, and then something that we can market out in the future. We also offer unique opportunities to get involved and come watch us race in a European Cup race, or actually have that bobsleigh once in a lifetime experience and get the key members into a sled and I'll take them down, which is a massive experience for anyone to have an opportunity to do. So
you're trying to put people off, John?
No, not put people off. It is definitely something that I'd recommend. It's scary, enjoyable, but something you can really enjoy once you get over it. So.
No, I jest. I think that's, like you say, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. If you can't afford to go into space, why not go into a bobsleigh? But John, many thanks for joining us on the podcast. I've learned so much today. I'm sure our audience have at home. And yeah, please stay in touch, and thanks for joining us.
No, cheers. Thank you very much. It's great to have the opportunity, and best of luck. So.
Stuart, what a fascinating interview. Great insight, isn't it, into the world of an Olympic Games?
Absolutely. And as you said, very much chicken and egg, isn't it? If you don't succeed, if you don't medal, you don't get funding. And without that funding, you're not going to medal. So I feel it's a very difficult challenge for them and other sports, undoubtedly.
Yeah, conundrum indeed. Yeah, for sure. So before we get back on with the news, just a little plug for the MTD MFG app. So it's available from all your usual app stores for both Android and iPhone. It's a great app. Obviously, keep up to date with the latest manufacturing news. We can send you notifications to tell you about the latest stories. Equally, there's content on there you won't see elsewhere. So please do go to your app provider and download the MTD MFG app. Also, factoring out, send us an inquiry. It's dead easy. Anywhere you see us on social media, send us an inquiry. We'd love to have you on board Factory Now. But right, back on with the news, Stuart. 53 million funding boost for the UK's manufacturing sector. This had a lot of attention, hasn't it, across social media this week?
Absolutely, Joe. So 5 new research centres and projects to help supply chains become more productive are among recipients of £53 million in new government funding to drive the development of the latest digital manufacturing technologies. The funding has been awarded through the National Made Smarter programme, a collaboration between UK government and industry design to develop and increase the use of these emerging technologies. £10 million in funding has also been awarded to the new Made Smarter Innovation Digital Supply Chain Innovation Hub, easy to say, to develop breakthrough solutions to create supply chains that are fully connected, resilient and sustainable.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. Yeah, it's good, but we need more. But it's a good start. Very positive news from the CBI's Industrial Trends Survey as well this week.
Yeah, some of the headlines: number of people employed in Britain's factories rose at its fastest rate in almost half a century in the past 3 months as manufacturers sought to cope with the surge in post-lockdown order books. Business Lobby Group has also said that jobs, investment, output costs and prices were all rising rapidly in the strongest period of growth since the early to mid-70s. The highlight of this is manufacturers expect the trend to continue with output set to grow at the fastest rate on record in the next quarter.
Yeah, fantastic. Great to see people in work. This next one, Dynamo Motor Company, set to create a lot of jobs in the Coventry area. It's not a company, it gets a lot of airtime, is it, Stuart?
No, you talk about electric cab manufacturers and you automatically think about LEVC and other electric vehicle manufacturers like Arrival. But the company said committing to UK jobs growth and future all-electric taxi and van conversions. The firm has announced its next expansion phase, where it plans to recruit an extra 275 people in the UK and convert up to 10,000 taxis and commercial privately owned vehicles per year. They've launched a Seeders campaign, crowdfunding campaign. They plan to raise £2 million, and they've already received £1.5 million, so well on the way. The company, as I say, they don't really get much airtime. They released its first vehicle in 2019, the Dynamo Taxi, which became the world's first all-electric black cab in 2020 when it entered production. Yeah,
great news. 275 jobs getting on in the Midlands there. Fantastic news. Well done to Dynamo. That pretty much brings an end to this week's podcast. But there's a story we can't finish without talking about it. It's a nice one. It's one that pulls at the heartstrings, Stuart. Tell us more about this JCB engineer.
Yeah, as you say, it pulls at the heartstrings. It's very bittersweet. Bill Turnbull, a former chief engineer at JCB prior to retiring in 1995, he amassed a multi-million-pound fortune thanks to his interest in cars, and he's made a huge donation in his will to a Staffordshire school which is dedicated to nurturing the engineers of the future. When he died in 2019, age 88, Bill left more than £4 million in his will, thanks to an investment he made more than 50 years earlier in a rare 1937 Bugatti, paying just £1,500 for the car, and he's restored it, over a number of decades. Now, in a nod to his lifelong interest in engineering, the JCB Academy in Rochester, Staffordshire, has been given a total of £125,000 towards the construction of an automation and robotics centre. And quite rightly, the new facility will be called the Bill Turnbull Suite in memory of the benefactor.
Yeah, fantastic. What a great, like you say, very bittersweet, but it's a nice touch and a nice place to finish this week's podcast. As always, there's plenty more news available on mtdmfg.com. We don't get time to run through all the news of the week, but there's plenty going on in the UK manufacturing sector. So yeah, please do go take a look. Please take a look at your app store. Download the MTD MFG app if you don't have it. A big thank you to Stuart. A big thank you to John Stambridge, our guest today, the British Bobsleigh Development Pilot. But as always, the biggest thank you goes to you at home for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Great British Manufacturing Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and a review. You can find us on Twitter using @MTDMFG and @Jefferson_MFG.